Hello, my name is Eamonn Mac Aodha. I'm the Director of the Parliament and Institutions section of Ireland's Permanent Representation to the European Union in Brussels. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 11th in our series of webinars focused on EU careers. And in previous webinars, we've discussed EU traineeships, Irish language opportunities, opportunities in the field of agriculture, in food, health and safety, interpretation and translation, data protection, and anti-fraud, amongst others. Our webinars can be watched back at any time on the Department of Foreign Affairs YouTube account. Last Thursday, the EU launched a competition for administrators in the field of audit in the European Court of Auditors. The deadline to apply in this competition is the 12th of April 2022. Today's webinar will provide more information on this specific competition, and we will hear from Irish colleagues currently working in the Court of Auditors. The Department of Foreign Affairs provides support to Irish citizens applying for jobs in the EU at every step of the process, including access to online packs, practice packs for the computer-based tests, and one-to-one training depending on the competition stage. Please do contact us if you are applying for EU posts at eujobs@dfa.ie. That's eujobs@dfa.ie. Now, I'd like to welcome our speakers today. Tony Murphy is the Irish member of the European Court of Auditors. We're also joined by Noirin O'Grady, Principal Auditor in the European Court of Auditors. And finally, we are joined by Rita HINEK from the European Personnel Selection Office. Rita is going to give us an overview of this specific competition process. So thanks very much to our speakers for joining us today. And I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for being with us. You, the audience, will have a chance to ask your own questions through the Slido platform by going to the web page Slido, that's sli.do, and using the code #EUJobs to access the system. You don't have to register, anyone can do it. So look, let's get started. I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Tony Murphy, as I said, the Irish member of the European Court of Auditors. Tony, thanks for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eamonn, and thanks very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to participate here today, as I believe it's extremely important that Irish people are aware of the European project, and we also need them to actively contribute to it by joining the different EU institutions. It seems to me, in general, there's a limited awareness in Ireland about how the EU is organised, what it actually does, and the interesting career opportunities that exist therein. So what I would like to do today is just give a short presentation whereby I explain who I am, what the court does basically, and the opportunities that exist currently and hopefully in the future in our institution. So if I could just start with a presentation here. Now, so I don't see that video. Okay. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that technology. So yeah, as I say, I'll just start by giving an overview of the presentation. As I said, who I am, career progression, what is the ECA, what we do, some of the products that we produce, and as I say, finally wrapping up with opportunities in the institution. So, as Eamonn said at the start, I'm basically the Irish member. I've been the Irish member in the European Court of Auditors in 2018. I'm an accountant by profession, and I joined the Office of the Controller and Auditor General in Ireland from school, basically, and ended up doing an ACCA qualification while working there. I have been then in the EU institution since the end of 1999. I was seconded from the CNAG's office for a 4-year period, and during that period, I actually did a couple of competitions. I did an AST competition and I did an AD competition. So in 2003, I started as an official following the EPSO competition as an auditor in the European Commission in DG ECFIN Luxembourg. And after that, from 2007, I became the head of unit there. In 2000, and in the meantime, I was on some audit boards, like I was a member of the audit board of the European Investment Fund here in Luxembourg for a couple of years. And in 2013, due to rotation policy in the commission, I needed to move. So I ended up transferring to the Court of Auditors. I started here as the head of private office for the Bulgarian member, Madam Ivanova. That was in 2013. In 2017, I became a director in Chamber 4. And as I say, in 2018, I was nominated by the Irish government to be the Irish member of the court, a position I'm very proud to have. So moving on from that, I will now go into who we are. So as I said already, we're based here in Luxembourg. We're one of the 7 EU institutions. I mean, all the different institutions have their own specific role. I mean, we come sort of at the end of the chain in terms of ex post. I mean, there's the political, the lawmaking, the executive, which is the commission, the judiciary, the Court of Justice, which is our neighbour down the road. And then we are external auditors. So basically, we are the independent external auditor of the EU. We're established in 1975 and we became a fully fledged institution in 1992. And I think this is a very important development because it puts us on a level status as the other institutions, which is very important when you're basically auditing those institutions. So, as I said, the mission and role, we're the independent external auditor of the EU, sometimes called the EU financial watchdog or guardians of the EU's finances. We basically warn of risks, we provide assurance, we indicate shortcomings, and we highlight good practices where we find them. So we offer guidance to EU policymakers and legislators on how to improve the management of EU policy and programs. And this is a very important aspect of our work, which is probably not particularly well known by those who are outside the circle, let's say. So through our work, we ensure that EU citizens know how their money is being spent. So I think it's a very important role that we have. As I say, as an institution, we're one of the lesser known ones, but I don't think that in any way diminishes the importance of the role. So in terms of organization, we have 5 audit chambers. There's first of all, there's a one member nominated from each member state. So currently we have 27 members. We have then support services like the presidency, the secretary general. We have an audit quality control committee. And then we have 5 chambers which cover the different policy areas through which we actually audit. So the policy areas are linked in a way to the EU budget and how that is distributed. So the so-called MFF headings. So Chamber 1 is sustainable use of natural resources. So this is particularly interesting in Irish terms because we get 90% of EU funding, or 95% comes not via Chamber 1, but in terms of policies which are audited by Chamber 1, mainly direct payments and direct aid to farmers. Chamber 2 is investment for cohesion, growth and inclusion. This is mainly about countries or the member states which are trying to be brought up to a general level of wealth and prosperity, let's say, to even the playing pitch, if you like. Chamber 3 is external action, security and justice. And then Chamber 4 is regulation of markets and competitive economy. Chamber 5 is financing and administering the EU Union, and this is where I'm actually the Dean of Chamber 5 for the last 2 years. So I think this is a good overview of the court because it shows the various different policy areas in which we are involved, that it's not just accounts, because sometimes there's a perception that we're all accountants here and we're all just checking figures, which is not actually the case, and you will see that more in the next couple of slides. So a very important, and I think it's one of the benefits of working in EU institutions, is the diversity. I mean, you're going to be working, if you enter these institutions, with people from various backgrounds and member states, different member states, staff for a broad range of academic and professional backgrounds. As I say, the perception may be that we're all accountants. Actually, there's a very small number of actual accountants here. Most people have other backgrounds, such as economists, lawyers, all sorts of other business consultants, all these kind of talents that we actually need when we're doing our work. The average profile, I mean, it's probably in line with a lot of EU institutions. It's 44, and we would hope to be bringing that down as we go along. We have made some improvements in terms of gender balance. It's now roughly 50-50. We have 900 basically staff members overall, of which 21 currently are Irish. So, So 2020 at a glance. I mean, this is what we have produced, if you like, in 2020. I mean, we have a new strategy for 21-25. We did a couple of reviews on the EU COVID-19 response. We had to revise our work program because of basically the pandemic and other issues. One big impact of the pandemic, I would say, is a big drop, as you can see on the slide here, of 70% in the days that our auditors actually go on the spot. Meaning on the spot means going to the final beneficiaries or to the audit authorities in the member states. So our auditors are not just sitting here based in Luxembourg. They do travel a lot out to the member states. We basically follow the money. So we gave a clean opinion on the accounts and revenue. We are, as I say, we audit the EU accounts every year. We also have a requirement to give an opinion on the legality and regularity of the underlying transactions, which is a very unusual thing. It's not done very often, if at all, but it's a requirement we have under the Maastricht Treaty. And this was linked to the fact that we had an error rate of 2.7% basically on expenditure for 2020. So we've produced 32 special reports, which I will explain a little bit more in the next slide. We had 14 other previews, 11 opinions, and 3 ECA journals. So that's in terms of publications. We had 156 appearances at the European Parliament, the Council, or in national parliaments. And obviously, like all other audit entities, we're looking into how we can use digital tools to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of our work going forward. So, as I say, the main product we have is our annual report. This takes up roughly 50% of our resources, and it basically provides results of financial and compliance audit work. So it includes the statement of assurance. This is what I was saying earlier. It's where we talk about the legality and regularity of the underlying transactions. And it's basically trying to ensure that money is spent correctly and in line with the relevant rules. So the main purpose of this report is to help Parliament and Council approve of how the budget was spent. And for the last 2 years, in fact, I have been the member in charge of this annual report. So we also produce a number of special reports, and these are linked in a way to what I explained earlier about the different chambers and the different policy areas. So I think it gives a good overview of the variety of tasks that we do. As I said, I want to keep stressing that it's not just that we audit accounts. I mean, for instance, some interesting reports, and these are just an extract of a few. As I say, there was 32 of these in 2020. So we had in 2022, we have single market for investment funds, security of 5G networks, rule of law in the Western Balkans. In 2021, we had fraud and the common agricultural policy, anti-money laundering, and milk and dairy production, under which Ireland was a sampled member state. Because when we do these audits, we do a sample of member states. We can't go to all 27. And then the COVID-related ones, we did passenger rights during the COVID and procurement of vaccines. So as you can see, it's quite a wide variety of tasks that we undertake. Now, opportunities at the ECA. The purpose, as Eamonn said, is to give more specific information on this particular competition, which is administrators in the field of audit. So, I mean, the administrators who would be successful in this would contribute to the annual program of the court. They would draw up audit plans, implementing audit procedures, provide expertise and support in knowledge management, contribute to maintaining, developing ECA's relations with external stakeholders, which is a very important aspect, and also collection and analyze data from varied sources. So it's basically akin to what an auditor would be doing in a private firm, let's say. I mean, I think this is a very, I don't want to go into the too specific details because we have a colleague here from EPSO, Rita, to discuss that in more detail. But this is coming in at quite a high level in terms of the commission. I mean, it's AD7, which is not the basic entry grade, which means then that there are some, requirements in terms of professional experience, which are quite high. I think it's 6 years. But as I say, I think, again, from my experience, these things you have to prepare very well, and these things take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. I think you have to have a career, progression in mind in that regard. So, as another one that I would like to really stress is, I mean, everyone has heard of the new generation program. I mean, this 800 billion, 750 billion program, which is basically recovery and resilience for member states after the pandemic. And I mean, obviously, it's a lot of money which has been pushed out in a short period of time. And we also are responsible for the audit of that instrument, let's say. And here it's less formalistic, if I may say so, than the EPSO competition, because it's like a temporary contract for 4 years. The deadline is the 25th of March, 2022 at midday. it can be AD5 to AD7 depending on your professional experience. So that's why I say it's probably less demanding in terms of professional experience than the specific competition, which is the AD7 administrator competition. The language requirements may also be a little bit less strenuous, and I think the application basically is quite straightforward. It's a letter of motivation and a CV in Europass format. So I think this is a really good opportunity, and it's a very interesting area because it's new. The facility is new. We're just developing our audit strategy towards it now. It's new for the members. It's a completely different financing model, and I think it will be a challenging and interesting work. So as I say, I really want to highlight this one that's currently open until the 25th of March. We also do, and I think because if people are interested in a career in EU institutions, I mean, obviously the EPSO is the path in, but there are also numerous, different expressions of interest which happen, and I think it's very good to keep an eye out for those. I mean, I think the EU Jobs Ireland is very good at promoting those. The European Movement Ireland, these Twitter sites or LinkedIn, they're very good at advertising these type of programs. Like for instance, we had a junior professional program recently. It's basically, the first one was more geared at purely graduates who are coming out of college. I mean, they've changed it. The second one is now requires 2 or 3 years, 2 years of professional experience in the field of audit. So it's still less, say, than the 6 which is required for this particular competition. So again, I would encourage people just to keep an eye out for these temporary posts, which could be a way of eventually coming into an EPSO competition. I mean, I think it's a very useful way of gaining experience in an institution and the environment, and maybe figuring out if it's somewhere where you would really like to stay. So we also have traineeships. I don't know if that would be interesting for many. It's 5 months. Again, I think this is a very good opportunity to to get an experience of an institution, what it's like to live outside of Ireland for a few months in a different environment, and see whether it would be something that would take your interest. I mean, we have been, we're a small institution, so I would, again, while I'm here to promote the ECA today, I would encourage people to look out for any competitions in any of the EU institutions, because I think it's really an important thing that we have a footprint in these institutions. So, I mean, we have roughly 70 trainees here, which is small compared to the Commission, the Blue Book scheme and things like that. But still, I mean, we have been able to get 5 or 6 Irish people in the last couple of years. We have 2, we've offered them today, actually. So I think it's an ongoing process. And a lot of them then end up staying either in Luxembourg or going to different EU institutions. So I think it's a very good entry point for people who just maybe are not sure and just want to see, well, would it be or would it not be for me? So, let me see. Yeah, that's me finished, Eamon. Thank you for your attention. And obviously, if anyone has any specific questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tony. And I'm sure we will be coming back to you later on in terms of the questions. Thanks, for telling us a little bit about your own kind of personal story, for giving us that overall sense of what the court does in such a clear way. The other piece that really struck me was the breadth of the tasks and the policy areas that can be involved, and that it is not it is not maybe the narrow view of auditing that some people might have that is at play here. It's a much more holistic approach and opportunities in that domain. And thanks also maybe there at the end for highlighting some of the opportunities that exist across the institutions, but also that exist within the court beyond this specific competition, although we will come back and look at this specific competition too. So look, it's a good moment, I think, then maybe to turn it over to Noirin O'Grady, who is working as a principal auditor at the ECA, maybe to give us a sense of maybe the nuts and bolts of what she does, and give us any of her insights in respect of the competition that we're dealing with today. So Noirin, thanks for being with us, and over to you.
Thank you everyone for being here today, and also to the Irish Permanent Representation, especially Mike and EPSO, for organising this. So I've been asked to tell you a little bit about the work that I've done at the court based on my experiences. So briefly, myself, I graduated from UCD with a BCom, and then I went to London, where I worked at what's now Deloitte and qualified as a chartered accountant. A couple of years later, I saw a competition advertised. I must admit, I didn't really know what it was, but I thought, why not? And eventually I found myself in Luxembourg. As Tony rightly said, I was one of a very few number of auditors based on the different profiles that we had. But the competition that I passed then was different to today's because it was specifically for financial accountants and auditors. But I was told straight away that I wasn't expected to work solely on financial audits. And I wasn't meant to be stuck in the office pushing papers around. But despite all this, I never imagined my eyes would be open to the extent they were, or that I would witness some incredible and, yes, occasionally bizarre areas where the EU provided funding. One of my first memories was a colleague who, in one of my first weeks at the court, went to visit Channel 4 in London, where he was actually looking at EU funds invested into research into HDTV. And he witnessed the technology for this and how it's progressing. And now we've seen that it's become a normal way of life that you nearly always watch HD television. And at the same time as that, despite having no scientific background, I myself was starting multiple visits to a nuclear fusion reactor and learning about the incredible physics involved in this. I'm an ardent follower of this. It's an international project and it's really interesting to keep up with today, despite still not really understanding that much about it. Now, I've seen a wide variety of funded projects in my audits, both financial and performance. And I have to admit, they did go from the sublime to the ridiculous. I had the great opportunity of going deep into the heart of Killarney National Park and learning about native and pest plant species and the deer population control, and also learning near Dublin how DNA technology can be used to age trees. At the same time, I've viewed a project that had to determine the different ways different paints dry and watched a computer pick mushrooms, taking at least 30 seconds per mushroom. But those two projects weren't in Ireland, I have to say. Now, I've had frustrating times too, such as spending 3 days giving a detailed statement in a fraud case in the UK, which was just dismissed by the CPS because, and I quote, although there was clearly a fraud committed and over an extensive amount of time, anti-European sentiment would impact on any jury and eliminate the possibility of conviction. And I've also had to witness African teenagers between 15 and 17 years make the treacherous journey across the Mediterranean just to be deported back on a plane within 48 hours. On the positive side, I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time in both North Macedonia and Kosovo, working on auditing their reconstruction and watching both countries develop and work towards becoming candidate countries. Now, for the past few years, I've focused on working in what Tony referred to as Chamber 3, the Security, Justice and External Actions Chamber of the Court. It's a bit what it says on the tin. We look at the funding outside the EU, on the external borders, and crime, fraud, and justice within the EU borders. Now, if you like adventure and you could imagine yourself on a Special Forces Ultimate Hell Week, then this is the place to come. Because in order to be prepared for dangerous situations in areas of conflict and conflictual situations, all the auditors in our chamber attend a week-long boot camp. And I had the, whether I would say pleasure or not, of spending a very wet, cold, sleepless week being put through my faces with the French Special Forces. But I will say that the strangers that you meet there quickly become friends for life. And thanks to certain potholes, I did get ranked the best 4x4 driver over difficult terrain. So in the past few years, I've had some unbelievable audit experiences. The plane I've been on has needed UN peacekeeping soldiers to move in so it could land. I've been chased by armed soldiers in reality. And later the same day, I've gazed in wonder at ceiling fans that cost more than €400 each. Over a period of 3 days, I watched a real-time tracking of people smugglers until it reached an area where the people on board could be rescued. I visited a military airbase to see people from all member states work together to try to secure our borders. I've gotten lost while searching a cruise ship, and I've watched multiple boats used by people smugglers get scuttled in Lampedusa to avoid them being stolen and reused. I even managed to get on a boat in the Baltic Sea to watch up close a military exercise with Polish forces. But one of the most stressful experiences I had was having to help interview young girls who had been trafficked from Africa to Europe and used as sex slaves, and listened to the discussions on how best to save them. But things aren't all high-tech and depressing, and some things have made us laugh and cry. We had the head of a delegation or embassy, there's 144 of them outside the EU, who was very proud that the EU had provided 95% of the funding to renovate a prison, only for the remaining 5% not to be sent, and the prison becoming operational using 2 empty shipping containers instead of doors. There was another prison that couldn't open because the tendering for electricity was considered irregular. There was the witch doctor who insisted on performing a spell on us. We weren't sure if he was cursing us or wishing us well. And then there was also the village that insisted on giving us a gift, even though we weren't allowed to accept them. And we ended up traveling back to the base with a kid goat on the seat between us. Now, despite the work being nothing that I could imagine, the experience has been unforgettable, particularly when coupled with the camaraderie of my colleagues and mixing with so many different cultures. Looking back when I was preparing this, I realized that completing my application for the competition was one of the best, if not the best decision of my life. And just to finish off, I would like to briefly show you some photographs to back up the points I have made. Let me see, yes. So this first photo is actually the French Special Forces in a helicopter landing in the field where they were about to attack us. And we managed to get a video of it. And when we showed it to our colleagues back here, we managed to make them believe that we were at the end of that rope. And it was very good. Some of them could actually make us out who they could pick which one I was and which one my colleague was. In the next photo, this is beside the airport in Africa, where refugees had made their camp and they used the airport runway as a footpath to get from one place to the other. And the soldiers literally had to come out with their guns to stop people going on the runway when the planes were landing. These are the 400 euro ceiling fans. Yes, these fans that we would normally spend 30 euro on cost 400 euro in Africa. And even then, they're not completely properly put up. This is just to show you the problems that can be encountered in something fundamentally basic but different in Africa. This is the cruise ship I got lost on. I thought I got on the cruise ship at level 0, and I was told that we would meet 3 floors up. So I thought I was going to the 3rd floor, but we had actually got on at level 5. So I was totally lost. Took them a long time to find me too. This is the prison that couldn't open because there was no electricity. Beautiful views, everything, but they had no electricity and no water either. Here's the witch doctor who put the spell on us, and we never really found out what it was. And in case you don't believe me, here is the goat that we had to take back in the car with us. And as with all EU projects, we always go for our visibility. So we always get somebody to show that they've been financed by the European Union. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope I've managed to convince you that it's the place to work. Thank you.
Thanks, Noirin. We've been running this series for a while now, and we always like to get people who are working in the day-to-day activity of the particular role to talk about it, but very few of them, and they've all done great jobs, have done quite the job you've done in terms of bringing it to life. I suppose I should say, and I'm sure Tony will back me up on this, that the danger elements are not compulsory.
Oh no, not at all. And to be honest, they're more fun than dangerous.
More fun than dangerous. And it's again, though, it is an illustration of the breadth of the roles, and it echoes the point Tony was making. I think very much in terms of how you've described, the kind of things that you can encounter and the scope that the job gives you actually to kind of to explore life. Look, I think we're very well set up now, maybe to move and to ask Rita, who has joined us from EPSO, Rita HINEK, to talk to us a little bit about the practical day-to-day requirements for the post and how you go about applying the nuts and bolts that are so important to success in this area. So Rita, I'm going to hand you the floor. Thank you again for joining us. And towards the end, maybe just to remind people to go on to sli.do #EUjobs if they have questions they'd like to put. We'll come back and do our Q&A, Rita, when we've heard from you. So over to you. Rita, we're not hearing sound, Rita, so you may be on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now? Thank you so much, Brian. I will show once again my presentation. Yes, that must work now, isn't it? With sound and screen both. Okay, great. So thank you so much once again for inviting me. And I had the intention to be very interesting and useful this afternoon, but after Noirin, I think whatever I say, it's probably going to be the boring part of this presentation. Nevertheless, I try to be useful. So first of all, I would like to use one props, which is, I don't know if you see that, that's the official journal. That's the so-called notice of competition. So to put that in a little bit of the context, we published last week the competition for auditors, and every detail of the requirements of the test, everything you have to know and you have to do in order to become an auditor is actually in this document. It's not the most exciting one, it's not the most interesting what you will ever read in your life, but I can assure you that it's a very, very useful one. So basically everything to know about it will be in the official journal in the notice of competition. So we have, as I said, as we said, we published a competition last week, and it will be open until the 12th of April. And we are looking for 60 successful candidates. So basically, the aim of this process is to draw up a list of 60 successful candidates who will be auditors at the Court of Auditors. About the duties, I don't really want to talk too much. I prepared it, but I think it was very well explained just before me, much better than I could. The main elements, which are in the notice of competition, are listed here on this slide, but you will find them in this document in the Annex 1 of the NOC. So that's the detailed list of the tasks, of the duties, what are expected from you. The general conditions are quite easy. So you have to have the full rights. You have to be a citizen of one of the EU member states. And you have to have no obligation or under national law, military service, and the character requirements. I think these are the standards. Probably only the first one, which is a bit requires to stress it a bit more, that you have to have the full citizenship, the nationality of one of the member states. About the specific competition, I think here it gets a bit more interesting. So basically, each competition, each specialist competition, if you want to say so, we are publishing has specific conditions on education and professional experience requirements. For this competition, we need a completed university study of 4 years, and so plus at least 6 years professional experience. It's an 87 level competition, as Tony explained at the very beginning. So there are two options. Either you have this 4 years university degree, or you have a 3 years university degree, and then we need at least 7 years professional experience. So it has to be one of the two. And then we come to the official languages. You have to know 2 official languages of the EU. What is this about the languages? The first language could be any European language, so one of the 24 on C2 level. And the second language has to be English or French, and it has to be a C1 level, so minimum C1 level. If you would like to know more about the language knowledge, because we are not asking for any language test, very important to know. So no one is going to ask for diplomas or certificates from any institution or university as language. So you have to have the knowledge actually. And there's the Common European Framework reference for languages. So you will find it actually in everywhere on all EU sites. So it's the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, where it's detailed, described what C2 and what C1 level means, how well you have to be orally written in your understanding of the language. So please note that in this special case, as language 2 has to be English or French, it has to be different from language 1, so you can't choose the same, obviously. So if you choose English as your second language, you have to use another first language. And about the procedure, probably this is the most interesting for you, and this is why I got invited here today. The procedure, how this competition is going to run is, first of all, we ask you to create an EPSO account. So you can go on our website, eucareers.eu, where you can create an EPSO account. If you have already an EPSO account, please use this one, because for each candidate, we have to have only one account. So not for each competition, but for each candidate. So create or use your EPSO account, and you can apply online directly. In this application form, we will ask you many details, and one of that is also the languages, of course, and also generally about the eligibility criteria, which studies you have, which professional experience you have, and so on. We ask you to fill in this application form in your language 1. After that, after this creation of the account, we will do an eligibility check. So that's a bit different if you have done already an EPSO competition before. That's something which we recently introduced for this type of competition. So you will have an eligibility check straight after application. And those ones who are eligible will be invited to the next phase, which is a talent screener. So the talent screener questions, actually, again, in this document, you will find plenty of indications, examples, what this is going to be. And there, the selection board is going to evaluate your professional experience, your qualifications. And if you are amongst the best, most probably 180, you will be invited to the assessment center. Why do we say 180 candidates? We are looking at the very end of the selection procedure, as I told you, for 60 successful auditors. So we invite 3 times as many to the assessment center. So about 180 will be invited to the assessment center. Importantly, again, those ones who already had some experience with EPSO competitions, the reasoning tests will be in the assessment phase part. So the assessment phase part will have three phases or 3 parts. Reasoning tests, field-related interviews, and 2 general competencies tests. So how this will look in practice, what we know about it already, is that you will have a verbal, numerical, and abstract reasoning test. Most probably, you can do it from somewhere else, so you don't need to come to Luxembourg or to Brussels for that. So, so that's going to be internet-based, home-based, or similar. So it's going to be a verbal reasoning, numerical, and abstract reasoning. I have to look it up, sorry. So the verbal reasoning is going to be 20 questions, the numerical 10, and the abstract reasoning 10 as well. And you have to obtain at least the pass mark. So it's a pass fail, actually. And the combined mark, it has to be 30 out of 50. Again, in this lovely document, it's very well explained for which one, how many questions, how much time you have as well. So it's 35, 20, and 10 minutes respectively. So please have a look. And as mentioned at the very beginning, I think you are in a very fortunate situation that you have plenty of support for preparation. So please get in touch with the addresses suggested at the beginning, because they can help you really a lot. After the reasoning part, you will get to the second phase and third phase of the assessment center, which is the field-related interview and the 2 competency tests. So these are actually meant to assess your competencies I will not read you now out loud the 8 competencies we are assessing. I think they are pretty much in line with best practices in the private and public sector. You will see them. It's about teamwork, it's about communication, working with others, how well you are in delivering quality results, and so on. And you will see which competency will be assessed in which part of the test. So more information about it in the notice of competition right now. And very importantly, and I think I didn't say that point yet, please keep an eye to your EPSO account, to your emails, to the EPSO website, because every time we have some new information about the next step of the competition, we are going to publish it there. How to apply? So as I said, it's under the 12th of April midday, Brussels time. Read the notice of competition and the instructions for the online applications, because they contain really all the information you will need. There are some sample tests on our website as well, and use the addresses just provided to you at the beginning of this presentation, which I guess is going to be also sent to you if you are interested in it. So I hope I'm not too late. That would be from my side. Thank you so much.
No, Rita, that was perfect timing wise. Thank you, and perfect too. And it's very clear illustration of what's involved here. It's really helpful to have that EPSO European Personnel Selection Office outline of how to go about applying and what the requirements are. And I think candidates from our other webinars for other EU jobs always appreciate the presence of somebody from EPSO to go through the nuts and bolts. So thank you for that. I had flagged at the beginning that we would come to a point where I could take some questions, and I think now is really that point. I'm going to there are a few already coming in on Slido, but I'm going to launch maybe myself into one, and it's really for both Noirin and Tony, and it's really in respect of more, I guess, the kind of the lifestyle side of things. So my question really is about your experience of living in Luxembourg and what Luxembourg is like as a place to live. Maybe both of you, because the court, of course, is based there, and maybe both of you could tell us a little bit about your sense of that. Maybe starting with you, Tony.
Okay, thank you, Eamon. Yeah, well, I think it's not such a bad place to live, or I probably wouldn't have stayed here so long. I think that's the opening remark, I would say. I mean, obviously you're not on the same scale as a big city like Dublin or Brussels. It's a different environment, I would say. But nonetheless, I think what I've seen lately is just in terms of, I think it's got more lively in terms of a younger demographic here, I think. And I think it's especially obvious in terms of Irish people. I mean, there's quite a significant, I would say, influx in the last few years of young Irish people in all sorts of professions, in whether it's the Big Four, whether it's in the legal firms, whether it's a lot of people here have, I mean, the colleges in Ireland have schemes with the hotels, for instance, for traineeships, for hotel training and stuff like that. So I think there has been quite a big change. I mean, for me personally, I mean, I think it depends on what stage you are in your life. I mean, I think for people with a family, I think it's a really good place to live. It's very safe, it's very clean and very well maintained, I would say, very orderly compared to what we know at home, probably a little bit. But I mean, I think there are obviously, you're not going to have the big variety that you do have in big cities. So I would say it depends very much on where you are in your life cycle, if you like, and what you like. Some people, I mean, it's quite a nice place. It's very, central here. I mean, I'm not going to compare it to Brussels, but compared to Dublin, let's say, you're in the center of Europe, so everywhere is sort of doable by car or whatever. So I think it opens up a lot of options in terms of visiting other place at the weekend or whenever. So I think for me it's been quite a positive experience, I would say, and maybe Noirin has some. But for me, I had a family here, and I think it was a very good place for them. I mean, I really think they benefit greatly from being brought up here.
Yes, I think a lot of people are quite surprised when they get to Luxembourg. They immediately say, "Oh, how green it is!" And even though it's in Central Europe, it's quite an agricultural area. But yes, Luxembourg, it's a small city compared to London or Dublin, but it has a little bit of everything. and you can find over time everything that you're looking for and enjoy yourself. It's the multitude of cultures mixing together that you really appreciate. But even with the Irish community, an awful lot of people follow Irish traditions and culture. And I mean, even right now, the number of people talking about it be coming up to St. Patrick's Day and things like that, and what people are doing, and they're not Irish at all and have no links to Ireland. You find that, but it's a place where you can make friends quite easily, and even more so, people speak an awful lot of English too. So if you try and speak their language, 9 times out of 10 they'll reply to you in English, and which you wouldn't get in many places. And even the policemen you meet speak minimum 4 languages. So, and you can get help everywhere you go. The medical service is great, and but the social life is good too. I'm quite happy here as well. I've been here slightly longer than Tony, I must admit.
And there's even free public transport. We forgot to throw that one in.
Oh yeah, free public transport, yes, and a nice tram and a new football and rugby stadium. So
you're all doing a very good sales job on Luxembourg, I must say, and I have to say my own sense of from being up there is it echoes that in a way. There's quite a number of questions coming in on Slido, so I'm going to turn to some of those now. Maybe I'll start with this one, which I think, Rita, is probably for you, but the others may want to chip in on it. So it says the talent screener seems to cover at least 3 of the European Court of Auditors 5 chambers, given that it is very difficult to have 6 years experience in all the requested areas. If a candidate has no experience in one of the areas, would he or she be marked with a 0 for that area? Maybe that's a tricky one, Rita, but have a stab.
Indeed it is. As I am not that familiar with the chambers, I don't know if you had a look already at the official journal, if it's indeed drafted that way. Tony and Noirin.
I would be surprised if it's chamber specific, to be honest with you. I don't think it would be chamber specific, because you're talking about an audit institution. So it's basically looking for audit experience, or as I say, so I don't think you have to have experience in each of the policy areas as I say, I'm not familiar either with how they do it, but I would imagine that would be totally unfair. I think you would have a general experience in auditing, which then would feed in the policy area. It doesn't really matter from an auditing perspective to a large degree, because you're doing the same thing, just in a different policy area. There may be some specificities to it, but these are things you learn basically on the job with people who are already in the chamber. So I would be surprised if it would be that crude, let's say.
I had a quick read of the document, and I think it's more that it splits itself between financial audit, performance audit, compliance audit, and things like that. And in those instances, I think there's very few people that have experience in all those areas. It's something that's quite difficult to obtain, particularly if you come down the qualification in the accountancy route. It's not that easy to have experience in performance audit, whereas financial audit, compliance audit, and other audits, it would be. So I don't think you would get, I would be very surprised if you would get a 0 in not being one of the areas.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and that would be my reading of it. Could I maybe turn to another question then? Again, Rita, I think this might be more for you, but what type of interviews will be conducted in respect of this competition? Will they be competency based, or behavioral, or general?
Okay, so basically it's in the notice, it's not yet specified. There will be a case study for sure, which is of course based on the subject, and the other 2 interviews will be or tests will be competency based.
Thanks,
and
Rita.
Competency is sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go
So
ahead.
the competency based interview is actually it's very clearly marked that it's supposed, or it is going to assess the 8 competencies which we listed. So it's a case study and competency-based interview.
Yeah, that's great. The talent screener, another one here. The talent screener mentions only experience of managing or implementing national, EU, and or international policies in different areas, but there's no mention of auditing as such. Is experience as an auditor essential for a role within the ECA, or will experience as an accountant be considered equal to audit during the selection process?
I think what we have to understand with the talent screener, that actually it's a very clear mandate what the selection board has, that there is this legal document and they have to evaluate the candidates according to that. So basically, I think what it says in the document, this is also going to be evaluated. I don't know if you would like to add something specifically from the audit side.
I can add that if you're an accountant, having the competences to be an auditor, it's not a very big step. And if you actually go to the court's website, which is eca.europa.eu, on that website, we actually have our financial audit manual and our performance audit manual. So if you want to really see what the big difference is, if it makes sense to you, I would recommend going onto our website, reading these manuals and digesting them. I've corrected tests recently, and the number of people who can actually quote sections from our audit manuals is actually impressive in the case studies that they complete. And so I really would recommend that, because as well the correctors recognize, oh, this is the text we use all the time, and it gives them a very good impression of the candidate that's answering the questions.
Thanks, Noirin. There's another one here, but the 87 interview would be conducted by the ECA and not EPSO, the question is.
Okay, so EPSO is basically organizing the selection procedures. So we have a selection board and they are going to do the interview. And most of the selection board is from the ECE. We have, of course, a sort of composition that we have to have permanent members. We have to have also representatives of staff. And we have also selection board members from ECE. So it's a combination. And maybe I think something I didn't mention, that it's going to be in Luxembourg. And most probably, of course, nowadays no one knows, but most probably it's going to be a physical one. So in a assessment center room in a building, so not an online one.
Thanks, Rita. No, that's helpful. I've picked up on most of the, I think all of the questions that have come through to us on Slido, but there was one more, maybe as a final question before I offer just a quick concluding remark or two. And that question is just about opportunities for self-development. Does the career with the ECA give you much opportunities for training, for other ways to improve yourself? Maybe, I don't know, Noirin and Tony, would you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I think there's training. I mean, normally people have a mandatory number of training days per year. So I think training is very much encouraged. I mean, and self-development on an ongoing basis. So I think it's an institution which pays a lot of attention to that. In the HR, we have a training unit, specific training unit, who would basically be providing general training courses, but also very specific courses in terms of, as Noirin said, if you're a financial and compliance auditor, for instance, that there would be trainings in performance auditing, let's say, because the idea would be, I think, to have more rounded people, that you move between the two of these from time to time, that you don't stay just in one side of the field. You know what I mean? Because, as I say, for me, accountants, I mean, going back to what the questions were, accountants, they do auditing modules as part of their degree, so they have a basis in auditing. and then performance auditing is not really, it's a very difficult, it's not a specific thing in its own. As I say, this is why we need people like economists and business consultants and legal people and engineers who bring their expertise to the performance aspects. So I think that's, I mean, but as Noirin said, I mean, it doesn't mean that people who are financial and compliance audits don't participate on the performance audits as well. In fact, there is a rotation is encouraged. I mean, you know, in terms of exactly what you're saying, to self-develop and have a more, as I say, more holistic auditor, if you like, who can do all the different fields after a number of years.
Yes, as well as languages, which we encourage, all new recruits are put into what we call the Aspire program. This is a 3-year program that's compulsory, and in it you spend at least one period of 18 months either in financial audit or compliance audit, and the other period in performance audit. You might take it the other way around, and it's to give you an idea of what both types of audit are for people who have no experience of one or the other, and to broaden your horizons. You might do it in different chambers, the 2 18-month period. So whilst your probationary period is something else, it's a shorter period. This 3 years is taken to do all the newcomer training to get you up to scratch on.
Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties, I think, so I hope I'm not talking across you, Noirin, but I think in any event, we've more or less covered what we wanted to cover today. And so maybe I can bring today's webinar to a close, but just before doing so, can I first of all thank Tony Murphy, our Irish member of the court, and Noirin O'Grady for sharing their experience of working in the court. Also, sincere thanks to Rita HINEK for providing this insight into the recruitment process. It's been an interesting and I think I hope a useful session for those interested in this particular competition. I hope it's offered encouragement to them. The Department of Foreign Affairs is willing and able to assist people who apply for EU jobs. As I said at the beginning, there's support available from us, so do get in touch with us again at eujobs@dfa.ie if you are applying for these jobs. If you want to rewatch some of this webinar or share it with someone you know, please feel free to do that. And it's on the DFA YouTube account, or will be shortly. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at EU Jobs Ireland to keep up to date with all our upcoming events and with various opportunities in the EU. Just before closing out, to thank my colleague Mike Williams at the Irish Permanent Representation who helped put this together today. And finally, to thank all of you for joining.